Hello, everybody. Welcome to another day live at the Waterhole. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and I'll be hosting you for the next couple of hours. I'm looking forward to today. Hopefully, we're going to have lots of wonderful animals gracing us with their presence. For those of you that have just joined us for the first time, this is a live and interactive Waterhole show. And if you'd like to ask me questions or send through any comments, there's a couple of ways that you can do it. You can head over to the YouTube chat stream. You can just check out the Wild Earth page and you'll find live at the Waterhole and you can comment there, but that's only until 1 o'clock. Otherwise, you can head over to the Wild Earth website and look for the question tab and send your questions that way. But as I always do, I'm going to just give it a minute or so just to see who is joining. So say hello, tell me where you're from and what you're hoping to see. It's looking very quiet and dismal here at Okukuyo in Namibia. It's funny how the bush ebbs and flows, and sometimes it's busy, and other times it's really quiet. You can just see a kudu in the far left-hand corner moving around. Maybe it will come down for a drink. Otherwise, the resident birds, of course, are here. And we'll see. I would maybe like to see a Cory bustard today. Oh, let's have a closer look at the Egyptian geese goslings that are moving at the lower end of the dam. They're just moving from left to right in the center of the screen. There's also a couple of springbuck just around the water's edge. They camouflage so well. And there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Are there 6? I think there's 6. I'm trying to remember how many there were initially. We'll wait till they move, scatter all out into the open, so they could be on top of one another. I thought there were 7 2 days ago. I didn't count them properly yesterday. We only saw them briefly, or was that the day before? All these days blur into one another. I just find it amusing that the goslings are off doing their own thing and the parents are far away. I can't say that I've ever noticed this behavior. Egyptian geese are known for being protective parents, really good parents, in fact. Well, I suppose they can do the best with what they have. Oh, no, there's 7. Oh, cool. Okay, all 7 are here, which is amazing. They are walking in the direction of one of the adults. Catherine, you've said hi, Taylor. You hope to see some things to cheer you up. Me too. I really, really hope so. I'd like to see a Cory bustard here, and I hope we get to do some birding in some of the other locations. Elephants, of course, always great to watch. And who knows, maybe we have a sneaky big cat. But only time will tell. We'll probably pop around to some of the other cameras, even if there's nothing there, just to have a look around and kind of see what's happening. Right, let's go check out what the weather is like, and that could give us an indication of what we could expect today. There we go. Temperatures not as high as they usually are, but it is warm in Kimberley and Okukuyo today. So we're now at Kim's Camp, which is in the Timbavati Game Reserve, Nature Reserve, sorry, Timbavati Nature Reserve. And this is the first time I'm actually having a closer look at the lilies, the lotus flowers that are growing here. I think this is the perfect spot to see some birds. It's a pity we don't have a heron standing here. And the water looks fairly clear. Well, at least at this section, you can see how shallow it is. You can also see how much debris is beneath the surface. Lots of sticks and twigs, which is, of course, to be expected. It would be really wonderful if these lily pads can just extend maybe by threefold. That would be quite nice. We'll definitely bring in a whole host of bird species that will utilize these. And of course, you can hear the red-billed buffalo weavers and a ring-necked dove calling in the background. It's a given when you come here to King's Camp. Let's have a scan around the waterhole. Let's see what else we can find. Stella, you were wondering about the water lilies and if they'd be able to grow away from water. So no, they are specifically an aquatic plant species, so they wouldn't survive without being submerged in water. And with water lilies, as well, you have to be very careful where you grow them, because if you try to grow them in a water source where there's flowing water, they won't do very well. They need to be in an environment where it is quite still, and that's uh, where they really do thrive. It's crazy to see the leaf development of the lilies, because they kind of unravel and eventually float up to the surface. Yeah, all the birds are chirping really nicely now. There's also another great area where we can see all sorts of things. You can see there's also some papyrus on the left-hand side. There's a sneaky pool of water there too. I bet there are plenty of frogs. We're still just having a little scan around. Not much just yet. The grass is looking so lovely and lush today. There's been a great amount of, not that much rain, but we've had a couple of really good sort of stagnated showers almost like once a week now. And she's just keeping the grass all chopped up, and it's thriving. You can see the hide just off to the left, which is great. Can you imagine? You enter, I imagine, a stairway and you go underground, and then you can sit there and photograph any wildlife that comes around. But it's so important to be quiet, sit nice and still to not disturb anything. But we're going to head over to Madikwe Game Reserve now. It looks like a couple of elephants are on their way. Here we go, one elephant and a warthog. This could be an interesting interaction. Normally the warthogs are quite nervous around the water's edge, especially with the elephants around. And maybe we can have even a slightly, there we go, we're going in, we've got the great minds think alike. So, an older bull, you can see, but still a bit anxious and interested in what the warthog was doing. So how he was twisting his trunk. Something must be there that the warthog is loving, and that's why it's so reluctant to move out of the elephant's way. Warthogs, I wonder what it is. It looks like it's just, I don't know if it's actually feeding on the grass roots or if there's something else there. I would rather be eating the nice green grass. And you see the elephant turns his head and still just looks at the warthog. See how his trunk is actually turned and facing in the direction of the warthog? So these are all little subtle indications that he is paying attention uh, to this warthog, and that these are subtle signs that people typically miss when they are looking at elephants. Everybody just thinks that a head shake and wide open ears shows when an elephant is annoyed or upset, but in fact you can pick up some smaller signs before you even get to the more obvious signs. Bull, you're asking if I feel any better. For those of you that don't know, I've had a migraine building up for the last 2 days, and it hit me in the early hours of this morning, and I didn't quite make it through the whole of the sunrise safari. I'm definitely feeling a little bit better. I managed to knock myself out and have a nap. It's still lingering, but much better than earlier today. So thank you so much for the wishes and for everybody else that has wished me well. I should be up and ready, rearing to go for the sunset safari as well. And then Casey Wolves, you've asked. Oh, you've also just said that you hope I'm feeling better, and you're hoping that we'll see some lions lying about. Wouldn't that be great? That would be amazing. I'm definitely going to try and get to the Kambula males later this afternoon at Chitwa Chitwa if they haven't moved off of the property. So fingers crossed, as I'd love to see them all together. So if we don't see them now, Casey Wolves, you're going to have to hang on tight until the sunset safari. And Sean, you're wondering, do matriarchs, so female elephants that have the sort of highest ranking status, they are responsible for leading the herd? And you've asked if they ever walk without their herd, even for a little bit. Of course they will. They're not going to travel huge distances on their own, but what you see with elephants is they spread out while they feed. And sometimes they could be a few hundred meters apart from one another. But because of the way that elephants communicate, that distance is actually not that great. They can put some space between them and the herd, but for the most part, the herd is going to try and keep up, as they typically would set the pace and decide in the direction that they're going. What is wrong with this elephant's trunk? Do you see that? How it's kind of bent at an angle closer to the tip of the trunk. We'll see now when he stretches it down. I wonder what on earth happened. Well, there's no bones in the trunk, so it must have got damaged in some way or another. Hard to tell how. Maybe something that happened when it was younger, or he could have also just been born that way. Maybe it's a deformity. But he manages nonetheless. I would like to see how he eats. I'm sure he has a technique that he uses. And it's definitely not affected his growth. As you can see, he's an impressive individual. And we have a second bull coming over. Keeping a distance just slightly from the other bull. Having a quick look around, see if anyone else is coming through. Nope, just an Egyptian goose, and I'm sure the blacksmith lapwings will be around somewhere.
We all know the struggle of finding the perfect gift. But what if you could give them an unforgettable experience? Something truly extraordinary. Introducing Nature Eye. Fly a real drone remotely at iconic locations, witnessing the beauty of nature like never before. Sign up to be an explorer and you could win one of these experiences yourself. Visit natureeye.com today.
The impalas are really just enjoying grazing. They're going to be having to a lot more feeding than if they were feasting on the longer grasses. The grass is quite short. It doesn't I don't think it gets very long. Well, not if all the animals constantly keep working on it. Catherine, you said that you wish you could lie down in that grass. It looks so soft. Me too. But I also wonder, is it a little bit prickly? But that would be a lot of fun. And then Mara Mama, you've asked which animal do I wish people would pay more attention to? Uh, so it's not going to be necessarily some of the big iconic animals. The reason why I say this is because they get a lot of exposure, as is. It's the same thing goes for animals that are under threat, like pangolins, just as one example. So they do get a lot of exposure. So I wish people would pay more attention to all the smaller things, arthropods, amphibians, and just understand how important they are to our ecosystems, and that without them, the ecosystem would collapse. And that's really important. And as humans, we obviously don't typically, not all of us, but I think we're like taught as youngsters that spiders and other and then insects and frogs are gross. We don't want them in our homes. Same thing goes with snakes. People kill them, but they all have a specific role within their ecosystems. So I think just having a greater understanding about the smaller things and how ecosystems actually work would be what I want people to pay more attention to. Look how the Impala ram, there we go, he's vocalizing. Look how he's herding all the females. He's not doing very well because they've divided in half now. And you'll see, it always makes me chuckle with the rams because they try so hard to keep them together. And then the herds them in one direction. As soon as he turns to go the other way, they just will come back to where they were and eat and really do what they want. I don't know why he's being so protective over the girls now. It's not like it's mating season. That's still up and coming. Normally starts around April, sometimes end of March, and can extend into May. So he's keeping a herd for no reason. But at this time of the year, you can see more individuals of males and females all socializing together, not necessarily strong, defined herds that we see during the ratting seasons. So Phil from Brighton, you were wondering if is practicing geophagy and osteophagy a sign that something is missing from their diet? The warthog was also nibbling on the soil. So yes, absolutely. And this area that we're at the moment, we've seen not osteo, geophagy being performed a lot. If you don't know what geophagy is, it's when animals will eat soil directly to try and get in any minerals that are lacking from their diets. They can do it any time of the year, but we do see this behavior as well as the osteophagy, which is the act of chewing on bones again to gain minerals such as calcium and phosphorus. So that would happen typically or more often in dry season, just because the plants are pretty much at the end of the line before the rain starts. So they're not as palatable. Their nutrients aren't as high. So it's valuable for them. So we've seen zebra, warthogs, elephant, the impala. They all like it around here. So this open area is mineral rich. Here's a wonderful question from Gunnar. You said, is being in a harem guaranteed that you are going to mate, or are the females in the harem still having to fight for uh, mating rights within the family group? So what basically happens is it's quite a short. Okay, let me start like this. When you're a male and you are able to win females over and find yourself a territory, the amount of herds of females that are going to pass through is going to really be dependent on where your territory is. So the the sort of high use zones being areas around water holes, because impala are water dependent animals. They need to drink every single day. Those are going to be the preferred spots. Naturally, you're going to see more females coming through. So the rams are going to compete for these spaces, and only the fittest and the strongest are going to be able to hold on to these spots. However, you can imagine if you're in an area like this, you're going to be challenged more frequently than if your territory was in a less favorable spot. So it's a hard job for these boys. I mean, they're constantly trying to protect the herd, right? They're trying to herd them around to make sure that they don't go wandering off and end up with another male. And then of course they've got to defend. He's got to defend his territory. So he's running around. He's vocalizing. He's chasing other males away. Perhaps he's even engaging in battle, and they're head bashing one another. Oh, goodness. So you lose condition really quickly. You barely have any time to eat. And when you're not feeding properly, you get weaker. Therefore, you could be, knocked off of the throne quite quickly. So that's going to be it. The males will mate with multiple females. I mean, he chases them around, and it's a very quick process. And the females are not always willing and wanting to mate with the males, but eventually he can wear them out. So one ram in a harem might not have the opportunity to mate with all the females. And when a new male comes around, he's going to do the same thing. He's going to try and mate with as many of the females as possible. Again, this keeps him really busy. So it really just depends. But a lot of the times, if you ever have the chance to watch it, it's so entertaining. The girls just run loops and laps around them, and they make them work really hard, and that tires them out too. So if a really big dominant male were to last in a herd for 2 weeks, I think that that's a pretty good amount of time. And then you maybe get knocked out, and you could join a bachelor group, so just the boys, where you can focus on feeding. There'll probably be a little bit of sparring here and there, and then. And then the more inexperienced rams will move off into unfavorable areas. They might not even mate that season. So it just depends. And then the same thing goes for the much older rams. I suppose they could also start losing interest in mating with the females, just purely because they aren't able to compete with the younger, fitter individuals. So I suppose the answer there is no, in short. But I can't do anything in short. And then I just hopped over to the YouTube chat. Dark Main Lover, you said, what is the rarest animal that I've seen at the waterholes? So WildEarth has access to a number of different waterhole cameras, and they have partnered up with AfriCam too, which has got cameras, gosh, all over the world. And and then that gives us to access to special things too. I'm trying to think of what the rarest animal I've seen. I mean, we've seen all the common ones. It's more likely than not going to be a bird. So the pied avocet is a really good one. You just don't see them all the time. Dark rain mother, if you're not familiar with that bird, you can have a quick Google of it. But we see it at Tau Lodge, which is the other water hole in Madikwe. And then the other day at Rosie's Pan, we were watching red-billed quelias, and it was so fascinating because briefly was an individual that flew down that had a pink head, and I thought, is that can't be a red-headed quelia? I mean, yeah, really, because I was like, well, they don't really occur here, and I thought that's unusual. And then I opened my bird app and I was scrolling through red-billed quelia, and then an image popped up, and the caption is an unusual pink-headed form, which was amazing. So I'm 99% sure that's what I saw. So it's not necessarily rare, but it's an uncommon color variation to see. So I was just sad it wasn't quick enough to snap a picture of it, because that's a first for me in my guiding career. It's quite possible that I've maybe forgotten something, but not necessarily a mammal species. I'm just trying to think at Old Donyo, which is another one of the Africam cameras. Uh, Seeing they're called the non-striped ground squirrel. I think that's what it was called. That was really awesome to see. I've never seen them before, so that was new. Again, they will be quite common, I suspect, around Amboseli and maybe even the Savo areas and Oldonyo. But that was quite cool. It was something that I hadn't seen before. So it's a bit tricky to say, but maybe I've missed something. I'm trying to think what else has been a goodie. I mean, I saw Cape Shovelers for the first time at Camphis Dam, so that was amazing. Not that they are uncommon. I just hadn't come or been in an area where I could see them. I suppose I have, but it's not lucky enough.
Step into a world of discovery as you join Eco Training's renowned courses in the heart of Kenya's Masai Mara. These courses are the perfect way to gain a deep understanding of the African bush, even if you have limited time. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to experience the wild in a meaningful and life-changing way. Enroll today and embark on a transformative journey with Eco Training in Kenya's Masai Mara, the leading force in conservation education.
It's just wonderful how 1 minute there's no elephants around, and then the next they're all here, all the bulls. Look at them, they're all doing different things. I love the one on the right, there's head on his trunk. Another one, well, with just everything hanging out. I don't know how to put it, super relaxed. Another one with his trunk hanging over his tusks. Oh, that's very entertaining. Now, let's see, there's going to be an interaction here between the. Oh, there we go. Everybody's interacting with one another now. You can see this is quite playful, how one elephant is sticking his trunk in the other one's mouth. A lot of the time, this is how elephants will greet one another. I'm so glad that we as humans do not do this. Can you imagine walking up to someone to say hello and you stick your hand or finger in their mouth? Not great. There's quite a tussle going on now. You can see that bull on the right hand side, just how much bigger he is than the rest of them. He doesn't look like he's too bothered watching the three youngsters all push and shove one another around. Mama Mara, oh, sorry, Mara Mama, you're wondering now how would I handle working with a team of people who have different opinions about how to handle sightings? Well, it is really tricky, but at lodges, again, it really just depends on the lodge, and I find that higher end lodges are more strict and quite often have training programs in place where even when guides are working, they are still constantly being monitored and assessed just to make sure that they're upholding the standard of the company. And then there's going to be very set sort of rules in place. They'll say no off-roading for elephants, right? Then it doesn't matter what your opinion is. There's no one is allowed to go off with elephants, and if you do, there will be consequences for your actions. They might also say, for an example, if a leopard is in a tree, you can 25 meters, or you have to keep a distance of 25 meters away from that tree. If you are found to be doing the opposite, there will be consequences. So again, I just find no, it's not all higher end lodges. I've worked in them. I've also been to camps all over. I'll just use South Africa for an example of different levels with different types of guides. And you're obviously allowed to have your own personality, but if there are rules and regulations and you don't follow them, essentially you're going to be held accountable for them. And it's one of the things that you see all the time when you either have a rangers or a guides meeting, if you will, whether it's just at the lodges or even like for example in the Sabi Sand, a lot of the guides from different lodges will get together. It depending, I don't know, there's no set in stone how often it has to happen, and talk about things, and that's where guides will discuss issues and whatever. And yeah, so it's such a tricky such a tricky thing to handle. But again, that's why it's important for you as a safari guide to make sure that your ethics are at the highest standard. And if there are rules and regulations, which there normally are, that you follow them. You can't be managed and babied all the time. Becoming a safari guide is quite a responsibility. A lot of people don't realize this, but you're responsible for your vehicle and your guests. And if anything goes wrong, you will be held liable. And I think a lot of people forget that. And it's all fun and games to view, wildlife and vehicles are on foot, but when something goes wrong, and it doesn't happen very often, there will be a full on investigation. So you've always got to make sure that you keep your plate clean. So can you imagine if by some small chance something does happen to you and your guests while you're on safari, and you have a record for being a cowboy and not following the rules and getting too close to animals, etc., well, you're going to find yourself in hot water because you've already got this reputation, and now you can't say it was a freak accident, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. So that's why I say to people, just make sure you watch what you do, watch what you post on social media, because you will be judged for it if anything goes wrong. And normally it's only when something goes wrong that all these things start to come out. So yeah, you're going to manage yourself. And yeah, and it's difficult because then sometimes you get people pressuring you to do something that you don't want. So you just need to be strong enough and have all your ducks in a row to be able to explain, this is why I won't do that. So that happened. It's happened to me multiple times in sightings where I'm behaving a certain way and somebody else does something completely ridiculous, which definitely breaks some of the rules, or and guests are like, well, how come we can't do that? And I'll say, well, you don't want to bash the other person, but you can explain to them in a nice way why it's probably not the best idea to do that. And for the most part, people understand as long as you can explain it so they can go, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Uh, because that's one of the trickiest things. And that's where I find it actually tricky to handle in East Africa when you're in these big national parks, and you also have just people who are not professional field guides. Maybe they're just coming in for day trips, not to say that they aren't great guides, but they've got this pressure. They're doing a 1 day safari with guests to try and see everything, so boundaries are then pushed, and you just can't behave like that. So it's a difficult one to deal with, but it's definitely manageable, and it's been done for years and years. The Egyptian geese coming around now. The bulls are finally splashing about and having a drink. Well, here's another great question, Mara Mama. Thank you so much. You said, what are safari guides taught about animals approaching them, and at what point can you use a rifle? So, for those of you that don't know, when you become a walking guide, a trails guide, it is required that you carry a high caliber rifle in areas with dangerous game, and
Whether you're a retiree, a recent graduate, or a professional seeking a change, the 55-day eco-training program is for you. With the coaching of experienced training guides, you'll embark on an unforgettable adventure that will give you a deep understanding of wildlife, conservation, and African cultures. If you sign up locally or internationally using this promo code, you'll receive 2,000 Rand off.
as you get more experience, you find an even better way to deal with certain things. So ideally, depending on the training school, what kind of training you receive, you're going to get mixed information. Every person is different. I now try and err on the side of caution because I've seen how easy it is for us to take advantage of wildlife and abuse privileges like off-roading. So I try and be as sensitive as I can. And then when walking, when you're doing your training as a guide to become a walking guide, a trails guide, you have to do encounters. So you intentionally approach wildlife because you need to learn how to handle situations. It's not to uh, um, try and initiate a reaction from an animal. Like you don't want to entice an elephant to charge you just so that you can get experience on what you could do when an elephant charges you. Do you know what I mean? The idea is that you view animals on foot from a distance and leave without them even knowing that you were there. That is the definition of a successful encounter. Now, of course, there's going to be some situations. There's no set in stone rules of how to approach animals because every single animal is going to behave differently depending on there's just too many variables to have something written in stone, and that's why it's important that you watch behavior, that you are competent in track and sign, because then you're able to distinguish, okay, is this elephant herd just been here recently by their tracks? Are we going to bump into them? You need to know your surroundings very well. Where are the water holes? That type of thing, because that could, of course, determine what animals you might bump into, but then you also have to remember that you can bump into anything anyway. So it's like there's a lot of variables that you have to take into consideration. Um, so it is hard work for guides. It's not as easy as I think the industry makes it out to be. Um, yeah, so when using a rifle, sorry, Mara Mama, again, I can't do anything in short because I like to explain different scenarios because there's not always a right or wrong answer. And, then you can make a decision for yourself. Uh, I only know a handful of people that have had to use their rifles on walks. And sometimes, I mean, if for me, for an example, I'll just use these. I've only ever had to chamber my rifle twice. So not pulling the trigger, but actually loading a round into the main chamber and I was aiming. Obviously, it was with hippos, and then I had an encounter with lions. And then 11 years, and I've walked lots. I haven't, I've walked in so many different areas in different countries, and I'm pretty lucky to have the experience that I do on foot. And in those 2 years, I've only had to do that and it should probably be higher, but I've managed to get out of situations. But I've also not, touch wood, not had too many uncomfortable situations on foot. But then again, you might just get somebody else that has had a lot, and it's not necessarily because they're doing anything wrong. Um, that's how it works sometimes. And again, if you have to pull the trigger and put an animal down, there will be a full on investigation. They will find, were you trailing the animal intentionally? Did you? There's a whole list of things, right? Did you give the animal a fair chance to stop? And then again, there's a long list of things that they're kind of going to go through, and I'm not going to go through all of them. So you have to really make the decision, right? Is this the right thing, or am I being a bit gung ho? And I find that with guides, that when you have a rifle in your hand, all of a sudden it gives you this sense of power, like you're invincible. But rifles fail. And then again, because of investigations that take place when an animal is put down, then it doesn't happen very often, that you could land yourself in a spot of trouble. So you got to be careful. So like I said, you don't want to get too close. Again, I bumped into animals just a few meters away and had absolutely no idea it was there because the vegetation might have been a bit thick or whatever the case is basically. So yeah, so it just depends. Every animal's slightly different. There's a kind of a barrier. They say when the animal crosses that barrier in your mind, that's when you're allowed to pull the trigger because they want the animals. A lot of animals will run, 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 and then stop last minute. We kind of moved away from the term mock charge. That's an old, sort of outdated thing to say now because a charge that could maybe doesn't look so serious can very quickly turn into something serious. So yeah, so we don't really use the word mock charge anymore. You can hear the Deirdre's cuckoo quite nicely. Canine Girl, you've asked what is the hardest situation that I've been in within my training? I'm gonna wait. Canine Girl, are you talking about in my training, like when I was training to become a safari guide? Or just my constant ongoing training because I still obviously I train all the time. I'm constantly learning. I renew certain qualifications. Or are you talking about when I train people to become guides? That thing, because there's quite a few different things I can go into, but I'll wait for your response. Isn't it just so relaxing just listening to the sounds of nature? Not very many people talking from the lodge, which is also really nice. Catherine, you're wondering if I've ever been in a dangerous situation because guests didn't listen, and how do you deal with that or avoid that? Uh, So it does happen, and yes, I have. So that's why it's also important as guides, and if there are any guides here, you've got to keep an eye on your guests. And a lot of the time, people don't do things maliciously. They just don't think. They're so excited, right? It might be the first time that they're seeing these animals, and the excitement just takes over. So I've had it a couple of times where guests have wanted to reach out and say, touch an elephant or a lion or a leopard that's walking, past us. And obviously, I always remind people while I'm in sightings, like, okay, if is everyone comfortable, firstly, and if this lion does come past the vehicle, just remember to sit really still. Don't stick your arms and legs out the vehicle. And try and keep your voices down. Let's just enjoy the moment. Take videos though and pictures, that type of thing. And I've had people that just can't help themselves and they try and reach out. And when I was very young, I had a guest tell touch an elephant as it sort of came past. Thank goodness the elephant did not react. I don't think he touched it particularly hard, but I did have to chat to him afterwards because he kind of bragged about it. And I just very politely told him that that is an unacceptable behavior and the consequences of doing that. And if the elephant were to react, it's not going to react to just him, it will react to the entire vehicle. So he's putting everybody else's lives in danger. And normally, when you say something like that, obviously you're polite about it, but you also need to be stern because otherwise, if you're not stern, I'm not talking about like, yelling at a person, they might be likely to do it again. I have taken guests back to camp before because of some horrifically unruly behavior, and they were it's just a complete nightmare, and I could not control them. And it's not like I don't try, and anybody that knows me that I can be really intimidating if I want to be. So I did. I took them back to the lodge. I dropped them off, and I said, unfortunately, you'll not be going out on another game drive with me. And I went to the lodge manager. I also got the general manager involved, and I explained the situation to them, and they had my back. I had evidence of what they were doing, which was great. And they just said, unfortunately, you will not be going out on any more activities because you've broken the code of conduct and the forms that you basically sign when you get to a lodge. And obviously, they were angry and annoyed and frustrated. Some were really embarrassed because it wasn't all of them, but unfortunately, everybody has to deal with it. So yeah, so that I've only ever done that once though. Um, I've also had people trying to do ridiculous things like taking selfies. Also, again, it happened to be with lions as they're walking a pride in an open area, and the pride lions just moving around. And some of the youngsters kind of got up, and they were sub-adults. And sub-adult lions can be so cheeky and are far too curious. And you really got to watch them. And these guests were kind of like leaning out of the car. So naturally, the sub-adult lions were looking at them, going, "What on earth are you doing?" And came closer. And then I had to tell them, like, "Hey, like, can you see that lion there? See, that's very interested in you." And then people's eyes go really big like this for the most part, and then they sit quietly. So I suppose it just depends on how you handle it. I think every single guide in their entire life is going to be dealt some, I don't want, without sounding horrible, but difficult guests. And yeah, but just remember that again, if you're a guide in good standing and you're not known to be cowboyish, and you do run into these situations, your head guide or senior guides or lodge managers or whatever will absolutely have your back. I know there's the term the customer is always right, but when you're dealing with wild animals and the safety of other people and your safety, then unfortunately that kind of trumps the cards. But like I said, it very rarely happens. Most people just want to come out and have fun, and for the most part, it's kind of innocent. If you don't know, for those of you that have never been on a safari before, you don't just jump in the car and go out. There is a safety briefing that guides will give you before you head out, and you just jump on the car. I try to keep my safety briefing short and sweet. Again, people are so excited. They are not really always listening to what you want to say. So the more long-winded you make it, that you're going to lose the attention of your guests. So I do just the very important things, and then I reiterate in a sighting too. And it's not don't stand up. It's like as you're getting into a sighting, and this is having the ability to park the vehicle in a good position. It's not always it's not all. What am I trying to say? It's not always the case that you can park very nicely because depending on where the sighting is. But if you can do that, then you'll more likely than not have people want to stand up because they can see. So these are some things that we teach guides on how to park a vehicle. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's actually a very important guiding skill to have. What else? So yes, and then again, if you nobody likes to be told no, right? So you got to try and do it in a way where you don't have to use the word no, unless you absolutely have to. Um, so, like for example, if we're approaching a sighting and there are lines and the guests have been so chatty and laughing quite loudly, I don't mind. You can be as loud as you want in the vehicle while we're driving around. Like have fun, talk, do your thing. You don't have to sit in silence. And when we are approaching a sighting, all I'll do is I'll just lower my voice. I'll change like the way that I'm behaving if I've also been laughing and giggling. And it's amazing to see how people just mimic you. So all of a sudden you say, oh, okay, so just around the corner there's a pride alliance. And you start to do that and you start to talk to them in a softer tone. And without even telling your guests that you have to, lower their voices, they're also lowering their voices. So again, it's all very important guiding techniques and soft skills that you learn, and that's what I think is important to focus on as guides, especially when you are new to the industry, and that you can essentially get your guests to do whatever you want, not manipulate them, but without being a Debbie Downer and being a dampener on the safari vibe, if you will.
I started watching WildEarth during COVID. I decided that I wanted to study more, and I saw that Eco Training Pridelands was doing courses, and I decided to do the 8-week online theory course at the end of last year. There's just so much out there to learn and to experience.
Sign up for an Eco Training digital course today with the promo code to receive 200 Rand off.
And see all the impala now splitting up, desperately trying to come in for a drink, and then being sort of ushered away by the Ellies. And then Canine Girl, just going back to the question you asked earlier, you said within my own training as a guide. I think, oh goodness, I'm just trying to think of a really, really good example. Uh, I, I sh- hmm. So unfortunately, when I first started guiding, I was not, I don't know, you're kind of at the bottom of the food chain, if I can put it like that. And sometimes, it's not always the case, but I unfortunately was in this position where I was tested and pushed to do things that were not great. Like at one point, I had to wash 10 vehicles. It's like they do these tests to kind of just push your boundaries so that you react in a bad way, if that makes sense. So keeping my cool a lot of the time was difficult for me because I'm quite a hot, fiery individual, and that can become quite tricky. Uh, the training side of things, I didn't mind it so much. Advanced rifle handling is difficult. So that's the qualification. One of the things you have to get uh, to be able to walk legally with a rifle. There's a whole bunch of paperwork, of course, but you have to pass this advanced rifle handling. Again, it's not a government necessity, but the Field Guides Association of Southern Africa require you to do it. And I really did struggle with that, just trying to build up the muscle memory. I'm pretty strong, so the weight of the rifle was never a problem, and I have a pretty good eye for shooting, but there was just a couple of things that I couldn't get right. So it took one or two attempts, and then I did it. So I never passed my advanced rifle handling the first time, and I'm so happy that I didn't because I learned how to shoot properly. And I sometimes worry about guides that they get so excited and they think they're the greatest because they passed their advanced rifle handling the first time. And I'm like, sure. And from training people to become guides and being a range officer, so seeing a lot of people shoot, it was horrifying and also a humbling experience for those that were on the arrogant side about passing their advanced rifle handling the first time, and then watching them do a second attempt in front of other students. Now this is like, they've now got a few months of experience, and they come back and shoot, and then doing or performing really badly. It's just a reminder that, you can shoot. Some days you shoot exceptionally well, and there's also other days where you don't, until you build up that proper muscle memory and you practice regularly. And guides, unfortunately, don't practice shooting regularly enough. And that's something that I think everybody needs to take responsibility for and make sure, so that you are, you've got, your training is at its absolute best. You should have to handle a situation. So that was quite tricky for me, but now I'm happy with it. Okay, right. It's just gone 1 o'clock, which means that we are going to have access to the AfriCam cameras. So let's not waste any more time.